All right. Hello. Good evening. We're going to get going here in about 5 seconds. Hopefully. Music always makes everything better, right? All right. I know I'm live. I see some people logging in. Hello, everybody. All right. Yes. Hello, hello. Enjoy the music. It's that wonderful, elevator music, right? It's just like, oh, we're getting music today. Okay, great. All right. Here we go. Here we go. You don't think this is showing up in the group? Just event. Yes, Sarah. So this is live in the event, not in the group. If you want to share it over to the group, that would be amazing. But this is, I thought, how I was supposed to do it. So this is how we're doing it. And if it's not, we'll fix it for the next time. And of course, people can join us later. All right. So here we go. I'm going to go ahead and get going here. We're going to try and keep this concise and short and to the point. Thank you, Sarah. I appreciate your technical help in the matter. All right. So most of you don't know who I am. My name is Josh Decker. I am a dad, a husband, an entrepreneur, an internet marketing geek, and an all-around nerd. That's how I like to think about myself. But anyway, enough about me, right? So tonight, we're going to talk about a little bit about this wonderful thing called DNA. And yes, I'm using very high-tech visuals tonight. Pictures posted on index cards. Yes, I love it. All right, so tonight we're going to talk about DNA. Before we do, let me tell you a little bit about myself, my family, and a little bit about our journey. Okay, so this is like the stalker photo of my family, right? So you've got my oldest son there. His name is Caleb. My middle there, his name is Ben. And my youngest there, you can't see his face. His name is Noah. He is my son with Down syndrome. And right here is my beautiful bride. Her name is Kim. And I've heard, she was telling me just a minute ago, that some of you have gone and found her. Yay! She was like, Josh, all these people are like sending me friend requests. I have no idea who they are. I'm like, score! Yes, you get to connect with more people. One of the things my wife and I have become really passionate about is connecting with other parents of kids with Down syndrome, because as I'm sure you've experienced, there's a lot that goes on when you have a child with Down syndrome. And quite honestly, people don't get it, right? Who haven't walked down that road or a similar road. And so we really appreciate connecting with every parent that we can connect with tonight. So let me tell you a little bit about what we're going to do. Paige, what's happening? So we're going to talk DNA tonight. Now, I am not a scientist. I am not a chemist, a biologist, a doctor, an anything-ist. I'm a dude with a kid, and I've had to learn some stuff. So I do not get most of the DNA stuff. I will just put that out there right now. I hope most of you can relate to that. Kimberly, hello. But what I have found is that there's some kind of basic understanding that we need to have as parents of a child with Down syndrome, whether your child is 30 or your child is newborn, right? There's some things that are consistent that I wish I would have known when we had ours. And some of that is because we have fear, right? When we're at the hospital and we're given this little baby and we're told your child has Down syndrome, or maybe you found out beforehand. I know for us, we found out beforehand through a genetic screening. That's all we did. But it gave us time to try and understand, what does this mean? For us, we actually, all three of our children have special needs of certain types. And so we've had 11 years of trying to understand, what does it mean to have a special needs child? With Down syndrome, Amy, yes, you can absolutely watch this later. It will jump up. It'll be recorded. So once we get done, within a few minutes, it should be able to be watched. Also, I'll have it on YouTube. And as soon as it's up on YouTube, I will put a link up for it on the group. Hi, Tanya. So for us, we've had special needs in our family since our first. Our oldest has some sort of undiagnosed genetic syndrome. So Down syndrome, we know what it is, right? And we know that there are these things that commonly go with it. And so we have an idea of a little bit of what to expect, right? With my oldest, we didn't have that. He had a couple of things that came up, one of which he can't rotate his wrists over. It's called radial ulnar synostosis, is your medical term for the night. But that led us to experiencing things like the geneticist and going to every doctor under the sun, right? And having this test and that test and trying to understand. And as I'm sure, some of you may have experience with your child with Down syndrome, or maybe another child is, when something's not quite right, there's a fear there, right? And there's a desire to try to understand what's going on so we can make it right for our child. And so I remember there were nights upon nights upon nights of my wife and I sitting there in front of the TV with a computer or with our phone or whatever, researching and trying to understand, okay, well, here's what we're being told from the test. Here's the symptoms that we see. What could this be? Well, it could be this, it could be this, it could be this. Well, if it's one of these things, we need to check this also, and pushing doctors in that direction to really not ever get any answers, but be able to understand that some of the critical things that could have been wrong weren't with our son. And so that was a huge relief at that point. But I think a lot of us experience that with our child with Down syndrome. With our middle child, this is what he looked like at 4 months old. Okay, he had eczema, bad eczema all over his body. I mean, look at it. This is actually a couple days into healing. He looked like a burn victim from the top of his head to the bottom of his feet. Turns out that was a polyester allergy. Right now, imagine that, right? Try to get your kid away from polyester. Oh my gosh. This is what he looks like now. So here's the before, here's the after, right? Now, why is it that I've seen other kids who had similar issues that their faces are just scarred, their bodies are scarred? Why is it that he's not like that? Because we learned how to support his body. And that's what we're here to talk about tonight is our children with Down syndrome. What is this whole thing that's called TNI, Targeted Nutritional Intervention? What does that mean? Why is it important? And what I want to do is try to explain it in a way that I think most people are going to get, at least most people in the United States, hopefully. Okay, so here's the analogy I want to draw. Let's talk about cars. When I was talking to my wife about this, I said, no, don't compare me to your dad, because her dad is like all about cars, right? Like, let's swap this engine with that car. And it's like, no, that's not me. But I think most people drive, right, and have some idea about cars on a basic level. So that's what we're going to use tonight. So people in general, genotypical people with the normal 46 chromosomes, okay? They're like any car that you might run across in a parking lot, okay? Any of those cars. Think your modern sedan, your pickup trucks, right? I think of the Ford Focus. I don't know why, that's just the one that pops to mind. Any of these cars, right? You can take it down to the corner gas station, put the cheap gas in it, put, the cheap oil from Walmart in it, and it's gonna run. Might it run better and longer if you gave it better fuel, if you put better oil in it and did, your regular maintenance as you're supposed to? Yeah, it's gonna last longer, probably run better during the time that it lasts, and generally experience a better life. Our bodies are the same way, genotypical bodies, right? So if we eat good food, if we take care of our bodies, if we exercise, I don't like that word, if we do these things that take care of this physiologically, it will last longer, it will feel better, okay? But here's the thing, our children with Down syndrome, they're not like these cars. Just like a Formula One car is not like these cars. You cannot take a Formula One car and put regular gasoline in it from Citgo or Costco or wherever you want to get your gasoline from and expect it to run, right? You can't take the cheap oil from Walmart and stick it in there and expect it to make it around the track, right? Because the temperatures are higher, the RPMs are higher, there's more stress on it. It has to have what it was designed to run on, okay? So how does that relate to our kids with Down syndrome? It comes back to DNA, right? So all of us our all of our Sarah, I'm glad you're cracking up. If nothing, right, this is going to be a little bit of fun. So all of us have these genes. When most of us think about genes, what we think about, yes, Walmart oil. When we think about genes, we oftentimes think about these things, right? Okay, so maybe I'll have something with cancer. Maybe I will have, maybe I won't have hair on my head when I get older as I'm starting to thin out. Maybe genes, deal with the color of my eyes and the color of my skin and those kinds of things. Most of us don't think about genes in terms of how our body functions. But what I've been learning about recently is that our genes actually do a lot more than kind of define our physical characteristics. All of our cells need to have things in them, whether it's in our brains, it's neurotransmitters, it's hormones that transmit signals across our body, it's proteins, right? It's enzymes. All of these things are actually produced and regulated by our genes. So a lot of our bodily functions, and I know, Sarah, if I'm getting it wrong, you're going to catch me for it, right? But that's, kind of on a very basic level, that's some of what our genes do. Now, in our children with the extra chromosome, here's what happens. Okay, again, at a very, very basic level. So they have this extra chromosome, it's the 21st chromosome, right? Thankfully, not all of the genes on that chromosome are active. Okay, if you read through the lessons, one of the first things you will... No, I do not want that office, Sarah. One of the first things you're going to read when you read that lesson is that, fortunately, not all of the genes on that extra chromosome are active. But there's this region and there's a section, it's called the Down syndrome critical region, that has the extra chromosomes. And so what that does is that region over-regulates some of the things that the body is supposed to do, which means that our children are running more like a Formula One car than the Ford Focus. And so what that means is, instead of giving them the same thing that the normal cars are going to run on, we have to think about giving them the things that the Formula One car is going to run on. And so the whole idea of TNI, the last 30 years of research that brings us to where we are today, is to understand the impact of that region that's actually active in our kids that causes a lot of the things that we see, and understanding how do we regulate that. And most of the things that we see, especially some of the chronic things, it can be regulated through nutrition. And nutrition, not like, okay, how many calories are they getting or that kind of stuff, but nutrition at like the micro level, right? Like, okay, understanding that this chemical constituent that comes from this plant will help do this with this gene. Much the same way that, if you look at anything that genotypical people will deal with, weight loss, right? Oh my gosh, Garcinia cambogia or whatever it was called, a few years ago, right? Well, that helps to, excite the metabolism, and that will help you lose weight. Okay, great. Well, what does that actually mean? Well, what that means is it's manipulating the body, the genes in the body, to function a certain way to get the result that you want. So just like we look to affect our health by knowing that we can do this and get this outcome, TNI does the same exact thing. It says these chemical constituents, right, whether it's glutathione or whether it's vitamin A or vitamin E or vitamin C or, any number of other nutrients that we give our kids, choline. By the way, if you ever want to watch your primary care provider, their eyes just kind of go, what? Talk to them about huperzine A and choline, or even glutathione, right? Because most of them go, what's that? What's that? My child is knocking at the door right now, but I have the gate up so he can't get through. So anyway, Ben, you're going to have to wait, bud. So understanding that these chemical constituents that are found in food can help make the body do certain things with the proteins and the enzymes that cause different communications to be affected in the body is important. That's all that TNI is. And I say all, that is a huge thing. It is a massive field of study, and we would not have nearly what we do today without the people that have spent the last 30 years, like Dixie, researching this and understanding it and figuring out, well, how do we properly balance it? So we, in my opinion, owe a debt of gratitude to the people who've done this. But at a minimum, let's understand that our kids are these Formula One cars. They need something different for their cells to work properly than what the Ford Focus does. Okay, that's where TNI comes in. So I hope that was helpful. I hope that kind of breaks it down to a level where you kind of go, oh, I may not get all of the methylation and all of that kind of stuff, but my kid needs something different for his cells to work properly, for her cells to work properly. If you can take that away from tonight, you got it. And I did my job. And if not, I'll have to come back and try it again. So I hope that makes sense. There's a number of you on here, give me a thumbs up, give me a like. I hope this makes sense. Thank you, Sarah. I don't know what happened the other night. I was just sitting here and I was like, this analogy makes a lot of sense to me. I should share it with some people. And so as I've been preparing for tonight, I actually, I professionally grocery shop for people, on a tangent here. So I work for Shipt. And as I go through line, I talk to cashiers. I'm like, man, I'm going to do this talk. I'm going to talk about kids with Down syndrome and how they're like a Formula One car. And they're just looking at me like, what is wrong with you? I get my kicks, we all have to. So, all right. So, I'm going to be doing a couple of other videos, either by myself or with my wife here over the next week or so, that talks a little bit more about some of what it is that we experience as parents. One of the things we're going to do is get on and talk about our journey as parents of kids with special needs, and kind of how she really spearheaded things and I had to come along, because this right here, me being able to talk to you, is because of my wife and the patience that she had over the last 11 years as I've come along to some of this. So we're going to get on and we're going to talk about that, because I know not every couple sees eye to eye. And I know a lot of guys, especially, right? We look and we go, because I did this with my wife when she said, when we were dealing with my son with the eczema issue, she says, this is what we need to do because what the doctors are giving us is not working. Okay. And I said, okay, so we'll get on and we'll talk about that. And then we'll also do a little bit more dive into some of the TNI stuff and hopefully breaking that down. And then between Sarah and I, our hope is to start taking some of the lessons and breaking it down kind of in this format to where it's a little bit easier to grasp it and be able to arm yourself with knowledge. The other thing I wanted to point out, I almost forgot, Formula One cars. You don't take them down to the local Midas, right? You take them to the local Midas, they're going to say, just put some gas in it, just put some oil in it, right? Oh, yeah, I could fix that axle, but is it going to run properly? Okay, unfortunately, we do not have many mechanics that are specialized in Down syndrome. And so what that means for us is it's our responsibility as the Ford Focus people, right? We have to learn about the Formula One car so that when we take it to Midas, when we take it to the regular doctors, we can help educate them and say, this is what you need to know that you don't know, because this is what I live with every day and I've learned it. And so that's some of our responsibility, and that's why this is so important. So even if you don't get the real technical stuff, that's okay. There's a certain level that you've got to get at some point so that you can advocate for your child. Okay, so that's it for tonight. Thank you so much for joining me. I will get this up on YouTube, and as soon as I do, I will get the link posted in the group. Okay. Yes. When we get on and talk, one of the talks that my wife and I are hoping to do is why this is important, right? Why we need to do this. And I'm going to talk about some of the encounters we've had with some of our care team, because there's some fun stories there, as I'm sure all of you have had. But one in particular with his therapy team last week, we'll share when we do that one. But for tonight, that's it. I've gone longer than I expected to. Thank you for joining me. Thank you, Amy. I appreciate that. And I hope you guys have a great night, a great weekend, and I'll see you soon. All right, bye.